Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of my Kickstarter Diaries. You'll notice that I have a slightly different background today, and that's because for those of you who aren't aware, Melbourne has been coming out of COVID restrictions after a very long year of hard lockdown. And so Maggie and I have taken the opportunity to get away for the weekend, to see friends, and to kind of get out and do the things that we haven't been able to do because everything has been closed for so long here in Melbourne, Australia. So my voice is a little bit gone because of all the talking and socializing and catching up. And but that hasn't stopped me from backing some Kickstarters and doing my research. So let's get straight into it this week. Now, the first game that was an instant back for me this week was a little bit surprising, but it was the Transcontinental. And for those of you who haven't come across this game, actually I was first made aware of this game through Shucks. It was just one of the Euro highlights that they were doing to Shut Up and Sit Down were doing to show some new games coming up, in the near future. And this was one that they spoke quite highly about. And then actually when this launched, I was most surprised at how positive Rado was towards this game. And even though he decided it was maybe a bit too aggressive for him and his wife, Maggie and I certainly are worried about aggressively competitive games. And this seems to, for us, this isn't too aggressive, but there is some elements of taking turn order away from other people. The way that the game works is that you're putting workers out into this centerpiece. Let's see if I can find a better photo of that, into the centerpiece here. And then a train is going through where the workers are placed. And depending on where you are along the train line is when you can activate and do the actions on your board. And I believe that if someone places a worker in front of yours, that means that they get to do the action and you might not. But we love those tightly competitive games because all of the worker placement is done on that center track. I think it would be really tight and a really interesting way of implementing worker placement because the train goes in both directions as well. So you would have to be thinking very carefully about, the actions that you want to take next round. And this just looks super interesting. We love worker placement. This is a first-time designer, but also came first, I believe, in a Canadian game design competition. So it just looks like quite polished for a first design. And that's what makes us so excited. The other great thing is it looks very contained as a game as well. So, putting the whole board out looks like it wouldn't take too long with kind of all the components being shown here that you kind of piece together the board. The other thing is that there's a solo mode, which some of you will know Maggie is very into the solo mode. So yeah, it just looks like it's been really well put together. And so I'm very interested to see how this plays and I can't wait to get it. It was an instant back for me this week. The next game that I backed this week was the Pursuit of Happiness Big Box. Now I spoke about this last week and said, hey, we haven't played this game before. We've always been interested in the subject matter, the pursuit of happiness, kind of like a new take on the game of life, kind of with more suited towards a heavy gamer. And what I was worried about is that the game might not have enough meat on the bones to be of interest to Maggie and I. But thank you to everybody who commented on the last video and said that they enjoy this game. What got to me most was that a few people said that actually it's liked for its theme in the household and also for the mechanics, and it doesn't matter which one you kind of like, this game will appeal. And of course, Maggie and I having these two very different perspectives on what makes a great game, from then it was kind of an instant back for me. The thing I will say is that I'm not thrilled at the way that they've done the campaign. It's quite hard to ascertain what the different pledge levels are. So of course the base game is the Pursuit of Happiness, the original, and in this Kickstarter they're introducing a new expansion called Nostalgia, which they haven't had in the game before. But then of course the game has been around, that there's so many other expansions that have been released already that it makes me think that a lot of people would have different combinations of the base game, as well as all those other components that have been released. And they haven't made it very easy to pick and mix and choose what you want to get, because ideally we would have gone in with the base game and maybe just the nostalgia expansion, just to get a feel for the game, just to see if we like it before committing to everything. And either they've done this on purpose to get everybody to switch into the all-in, where it includes all of the past expansions, or they have just decided that it would be easier from a fulfillment perspective to know the exact numbers of the expansions that they need to print. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because it would be very hard. I do believe actually Kickstarter has recently changed this week to be able to include add-ons. So that has been a real problem with Kickstarter, that creators have not been able to accurately work out what's going to happen in the pledge manager. I believe that they've rectified this now. I'm sorry, I'm still scrolling because I'm going through all of the expansions, because I'm trying to get to the part where we show, here we go, the pledge levels. Now, you can see the big box pledge. It's quite confusing here. I wish they'd said on this pledge, this does not include the base game, because it's confusing. It looks like it includes the base game plus the expansion, but in fact, this big box pledge is just the expansion plus an empty box for you to put everything into. Super confusing. A lot of people, I feel, will back this thinking potentially that it comes with the base game. Likewise, the deluxe pledge doesn't have the base game either, even though it has all of the deluxe components for you to add to the base game if you've already got that. Again, confusing. When we get to the all-in pledge, that's when it's kind of, you go from nothing, empty box, to everything. So the all-in pledge, and that's either at the base level without the deluxe components, or then the all-in deluxe pledge. And then of course the conundrum for me was, okay, we don't own the base game. So either I have to go to retail, get the base game, and then back for the nostalgia expansion. But then you start to look at the cost of all the individual expansions. Like, if we like this, then we'll probably want to get this expansion and that expansion. And then you work out that actually the all-in is pretty good value, even though I'm really committing. And then once you're in the all-in, it's like only $20 US more to get the deluxe. And so then, and that's how I end up all the time at the most expensive all-in pledge. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit frustrated at this campaign, but also I'm excited to get everything and kind of give it a go. And I feel as though if you didn't like certain expansions, or, if I don't like the whole game, it will be pretty easy to sell all of this for, a similar level of money. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. Those are the only two that I instantly backed this week. The next one is one that I'm still thinking about, and that is an abstract game called Haneto. And it's a Japanese game. And at first I was like, you see a lot of these little card games and abstract games on Kickstarter, and usually I don't give them too much attention. By the time you add postage and everything, they can work out to be quite expensive small box games. But this one's caught my eye. I do love strategy, abstract strategy games. Suffice to say, Maggie, being a themer, despises them because they have a complete lack of theme, whereas because they're so purely mechanics based, I really appreciate them. And I love just playing game after game after game with someone else who's wired that way. I love chess for that reason. But anyway, so Haneto is interesting because it's about loosely based on, it's really not a theme, this festival in Japan. And the Haneto is the dancer, and that's what you see represented on the tiles. And what you're doing in this game is you start around the outside. In a two-player game, I believe you control a matching pair. So you might control these red dancers and these red dancers over here at opposite ends of the board. And what happens is you're making your way into the center, and the game ends when this centerpiece is surrounded, this is meant to represent the float in the festival, is surrounded by each of these tokens. And the way that you get there is you leapfrog other pieces. Not hugely unique idea in an abstract game, but what is kind of interesting is that if this blue piece was to jump this red piece and take one of the spots around the float, the benefit of leapfrogging is not only further distance, but also that player would get to reposition this red piece. So any piece you jump over, you get to move on the board. And that's when it starts to get actually quite interesting, because this blue player could jump here, be in this pole position, and then this red player, they could move to the outside. But then if you were, for example, this black player here, and you're jumping this red piece, you could then move this person off the scoring condition, because ultimately at the end of the game, it triggers as soon as all of these spots are filled, and then whoever has majority around that float wins. But I watched the playthrough, and it's quite interesting that even when you think you're getting close, rapidly, someone could jump from here to here and take 2 pieces away from that winning spot. So it does look like, as per any good abstract game, once you understand it well, it would be quite tense in terms of how and where you move, and the timing of leapfrogging and where you move other players. So I'm talking through it and I'm almost convinced myself to back this game. It looks pretty cool in terms of the pieces, the quality of the pieces. This is actually a ceramic tile, which is really neat. And then all of these little pieces are ceramic as well. So I think it would feel nice. It would have kind of a quick, easy setup to get into the game. So yeah, I'm highly likely to back this. I love Japanese games too. So. Now the next game is one that I haven't backed. It's a game that I probably would back if Maggie and I had a slightly different taste in games. But as it stands, Burncycle is one that potentially the theme and the style of gameplay is not one for us, but I know that this game is being hotly anticipated by a lot of people, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. It is by Chip Theory Games. It's by Josh and Adam Carlson, who I believe are cousins and have played together for a long time. But more importantly, they designed Too Many Bones and Cloudspire. And because of that, they've got very loyal following. I've heard that those games are just brilliant solo. And so a lot of people were waiting for this next title. Burncycle is interesting to me because it is that cooperative or solo kind of experience, which Maggie and I are less oriented towards. But what I do love about it is there's some really interesting components to the game. So the main board is a neoprene mat, but then what you do is you build out the particular, the objective of the game is you all play as robots and you're trying to overtake something. Hold on. I actually really love this sentence in the campaign. It made me laugh a lot. Where are we once we get to here? Oh yeah. The goal of Burncycle is simple. Infiltrate the headquarters of a tyrannical corporation and break into the CEO's chambers to access pieces of code that will help robotkind regain control and escape human oppression. I just love that sentence starts with, it's simple, but actually that sounds incredibly difficult to me. But yeah, so the CEO's chambers or the building or the corporation that you're going up against is always a different scenario. And that scenario is set up based on these neoprene mats that have rooms on them, which I think is really cool because it looks great. The component quality looks amazing. So it's this mat here is the main mat, and then the scenarios are made up of all of these different little rooms and everything, which looks really cool. The other great thing I like about it is the action. So this network mat is the actual, what they refer to as the Burncycle, so the name of the game. And my understanding is with these 5 empty holes in the network mat, you are drawing out tokens that go into these holes here, which creates a sequence of actions that so it might be to use technology and then it might be to do something else. But if you can align your actions or your strategy with the sequencing that comes out of the bag, then you get more benefits. And so there's a lot of like quirky little mechanics here that I think will make this game a really interesting experience. It's clearly had a lot of thought that's gone into it, but unfortunately, it's like I wish we were into this, but it's just one that's probably not for us. Now, the next game I want to talk about is one that kind of confuses me a little bit, actually. Four Humors is a it should be a fairly simple kind of deception bluffing style game. I'm really intrigued by this one. I think because it confuses me so much. So when I was reading through this, I was like, I'm really captivated by the art actually. The art is really interesting to me, and it sounds like the mechanics are based on game theory, I believe. And yeah, I don't know, it sounds really smart and it looks really great, but I can't quite wrap my head around how it would play. I've watched playthroughs as well, and I think the thing for me is like when a game ties the mechanics to some really abstract terms that are thematically based, my brain can't cope with that because I'm so much about let's get to the point and talk about the mechanics, that when you start to talk about actions as being, you know, too melancholic, I'm like, I don't know what that, I can't equate that back to the gameplay. And I think that, you know, the descriptions that are used in the campaign are almost a little bit too clever, that it's not, I'm your king, well, I didn't vote for you. I don't know really what that means in terms of the gameplay. And so trying to get a grasp of this was not easy with the campaign. For that reason, I probably, you know, once I did understand it a little bit more with the deception element, I don't think it would necessarily be a game that Maggie and I would get into, but I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention because I do think that there's something here. There's something very quirky and interesting here. I haven't quite cracked what that is. So if anybody else has some opinions of that, please do let me know in the comments. I would love to have a chat about the game and what you think would make it, you know, why you're backing it or not backing it. And the final one today is just a little game that is coming out next week. And I just think this looks super fun. It's called Hibachi, and well, okay, here's something I'm just going to say up front. It kind of frustrates me that this is called hibachi because, like, I own a hibachi grill, and I believe that a hibachi grill is one that has an open grill plate with charcoal underneath it, whereas teppanyaki, which is kind of the basis of the game, teppanyaki is a flat surface, you know, in the restaurants where they kind of cut it up in front of you and they throw it around and all of the fun theatre. Teppanyaki and hibachi are two separate things in my mind, and so I struggle to kind of bring them together for this game. But the game itself is a dexterity game, and, you know, it's kind of a play on, you know, throwing food around like you would at a Japanese teppanyaki grill. From what I understand, there's some kind of dexterity element associated with that. And so I'm super intrigued to see this play out in the Kickstarter campaign next week. So that's everything for this week. I hope you enjoyed that. I would say that there's probably, you know, there were actually quite a lot of releases of really small card games and that style of thing. I tend to only focus on the games that really caught my attention. The ones that I thought about backing for a microsecond before doing more research into them, those are the ones that I want to talk about and will continue to talk about in this series. I want to say also that I really, really enjoy the conversation that everyone has been having with me in the comment section here. It's great to have friends to share this kind of obsession or addiction with, but it's also really love to hear what people think, and I always take your advice on board too when I'm thinking about, you know, how I'm going to change my pledges as well. So I really enjoy that, and I hope that everybody has a safe and wonderful week ahead, and bye for now.